no, this is definitely my first time recording this review and not redoing it because there was noises. No, that's ridiculous. Bar for bar album reviews. Run the Jewels. Run the Jewels 4. Before I get into the review, I just want to remind everyone that in the description I have links to petitions and places you can donate to. Every little bit helps because we can all come together and make change happen. That's the only way to do it. Let's get into the review though. RTJ4 is the fourth studio album from rap duo Run the Jewels. Run the Jewels, if you somehow aren't aware of them from my videos about them or just people online, is a group comprised of Atlanta rapper Killer Mike and Brooklyn rapper / producer LP. This album comes 4 years after their last effort, RTJ3. And just like with that project, this one dropped at a very appropriate time. It's almost as if they get a signal letting them know that the world needs to hear from them. I'm not going to go too in-depth into their backgrounds because I already have a video dedicated to that. This is really just going to be more focused on the album, RTJ4. The first thing that I want to say about the album is that it released a little early, which might not sound like a big deal, since pretty much every project has dropped earlier than the actual release date. But it's more important now because this came out the day after Blackout Tuesday. And Blackout Tuesday was meant to be kind of like a disruption to the music industry. Because they're not being treated properly by the labels or the industry. It also turned into a whole thing online about blacking out your social medias, but that's another discussion. But it's important because you have this disruption to the music industry, and then you have RTJ4 come out right after this disruption, essentially causing more disruption. It's also important because we're currently in a time where people are protesting daily against police brutality and for Black Lives Matter. Seeing as Killer Mike is one of the most outspoken voices in hip-hop when it comes to politics, the move to drop this early was probably not just to release it early. Like, there's other reasons. As you may remember from my video about the history of Run the Jewels, I mentioned that I had high hopes for this album and hoped that it would at least meet the bar set by the first RTJ album. And I am pleased to say that it met and exceeded my expectations. As of right now, this might be my favorite RTJ project. Run the Jewels 4 makes a return to what made Run the Jewels 1 so great to me. The length of the project is just over half an hour, the beats hit hard and heavy, and the lyrics are so refined. And that's really what I took away from this album. It's a refinement of their past 3 projects. It's like they took everything that worked from their previous projects and just smashed them together. You have an album that has the fun of RTJ1, the beats of RTJ2, and the messages of RTJ3. Prior to its release, the duo dropped a duo of singles, the first being Enki In The Brave, which is conveniently the first track on this album. The track does what every other RTJ intro has done so far, and starts off with Killer Mike grabbing your ears and yelling right into them. Back at it like a crack addict, Mr. Black Magic, crack a bitch back, chiropractic craftmatic. That's so aggressive, but it's so good and it's so fitting for Run the Jewels. The intro does a good job of really setting the tone for the project and letting the listener know that they're in for a wild ride. It also lets you know that Killer Mike and LP are like brothers and have each other's back no matter what. The second single, which is also the second track on the album, Ooh La La, features a Greg Nice sample from Gang Starr's DWYCK and scratches from DJ Premier. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this track, mostly due to the chorus. Sometimes I really do like the track because of the chorus and it's fun, and then other times I just feel like skipping it because it gets a little repetitive. That doesn't mean it's bad though. It's still a solid track aside from the chorus and continues the energy that we got from the first track. I also really enjoy the scratching that we get from Primo at the end of the track, so that's fun too. This then goes into the third track, Out of Sight, which features 2 Chainz. The track starts off with Killer Mike and LP going bar for bar, and then both of them getting their own verses. Killer Mike's flow at the beginning of his full verse is just so satisfying. I'm not even going to try to recite it because it won't be anywhere near as good as Mike's delivery, and I just don't want to make a fool of myself right now. 2 Chainz holds his own here too, and delivers an enjoyable verse with his typical humor. The next track, Holy Calamafuck, changes things up a little bit. The track starts off a little bit more upbeat compared to the others so far, with the 2 rapping with great braggadocio. But then there's a beat switch, after which LP's delivery and tone just changes into something more serious and almost angry. He says, "Missed the point trying to act like shit's cool. Don't fucking tell Doom your number's not due. Every other goddamn year I'm brand new. It's been 20 plus years. You think that's the clue? Maybe this guy's kind of killed what he do." It's like he's had enough of what people are saying and people underestimating him or thinking that he's not qualified to do whatever the internet thinks he's not qualified to do. I really do like this line though because it shows that he's constantly evolving in whatever he does and just kills it every time. The next track, Goonies versus E.T., is a fun track, mostly just due to the beat. Both Mike and L flow well here and are pretty straightforward with their lyrics. Plus, I just really love the rhyme scheme on Killer Mike's verse. I'm just kind of a sucker for rhyme schemes that go on for more than just a couple bars. It's just kind of satisfying, you know. Then we get into the 6th track, which is also the most relevant track to what's going on the album. Walkin' in the Snow has a great appearance from Gangsta Boo. But what really makes this track great is Killer Mike's verse. They promise education, but really they give you test and score, and they predict in prison population by who's scoring the lowest. And usually the lowest scores are the poorest and they look like me. And every day on the evening news, they feed you fear for free. Until my voice goes from a shriek to a whisper, I can't breathe. Now, many listeners at first may connect this line to what George Floyd said as he was being murdered by the Minneapolis PD. However, when asked about this particular line on Twitter, LP responded that this track was actually written last year and was referencing the death of Eric Garner and his last words, I can't breathe. It's honestly pretty scary that something like this, like something that occurred 6 years ago, is being echoed today, and that this line is something that's still relevant. This energy continues on to the next track, Just, which features Pharrell and Zach De La Rocha of Rage Against the Machine. This is probably a track that everyone's going to end up knowing by the end of summer. I mean, as it is, I see so many people on Instagram posting the song. The beats is just so smooth and bouncy. It's reminiscent of a Pharrell beat, or Neptune's beat, even though it's produced by LP. The whole point of this track is really to talk about the economic system. The chorus itself is actually really good, basically saying although the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, people are still a slave to money and the whole system. It also has a really great guest appearance from Zach De La Rocha, who at this point really should just be an honorary member of Run the Jewels. I mean, he's been on every album, I believe, except for maybe Run the Jewels 1. Plus, him and LP are pretty good friends, apparently. After the climax of these last two tracks, things slow down a little bit with Never Look Back. It's a solid track, that's about all I have to say about it. This track then flows seamlessly into the next one, Never Meant Much, which really just felt like a continuation of the previous one. I mean, they could have just been one track and I wouldn't have noticed. Pulling the Pin helps to start bringing this album to an end. This track has both Killer Mike and LP talking about some other evils in the world and how capitalism is not just a political issue, like there's more to it than that. Mike and L use religious references to help bolster what they're saying, and there's a bit of a beat switch between the verses, and I feel like both beats fit Mike and L well. This is accompanied by the chorus from Mavis Staples, which really does help to tie things together a little bit more. The final track here is A Few Words for the Firing Squad, and it's kind of like a reprise. The duo reflect on their lives and careers up till this point, and this then leads into what feels like a commercial for Enki In The Brave. This part of the track actually just keeps getting stuck in my head. Enki In The Brave, brave. Like, it kind of reminds me of the Pinky and the Brave theme song, but I mean, that might just be me. I find weird references from stuff like that. With all that said, though, this is probably my favorite Run the Jewels album, as of now at least. I mean, I've only had it for a week, so I don't know if I can fully say that. But it has everything that I want from a Run the Jewels project. It's fun, has great production, and isn't afraid to speak its mind. Once this album, though, gets to Never Look Back, I feel like it starts to fade away into the background just a little bit, and I don't quite snap back into the album until the beat switch on Pulling the Pin. That might just be me, though, because not all, like, those beats don't all sound the same. Like, they're all solid tracks still. Another thing of note kind of goes back to what I mentioned on the last podcast. Consistency in production doesn't just mean that the beats all sound the same. It could also just mean that a particular style or flares stay consistent. And on this album, LP keeps up with his production style, and there's a lot of layers to it. And sometimes you just kind of find yourself listening to a random bell that you threw in there. My favorite tracks on this album are Walking in the Snow, Just, Out of Sight, Pulling the Pin, and Enki In The Brave. This album really is a refinement of all the duo's efforts up until this point, and although there were some low points for me, this album is still one of the best this year, and it really could not have been dropped at a more appropriate time given what's going on in the world today. That's all I got. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this album. Is it better than the other Run the Jewels? How would you rank those albums? And like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. And that's actually all I got now. Stay safe, and thank you for watching.